Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Propaganda 101, Retraction Action, and Saudi Suitors. Plus this day in history with 7-7 and our Song of the Day by Public Service Broadcasting on Your Morning Monarchy for July 7th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to wherever you are for listener-supported media brought to you by you. Streaming live at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. It is a Friday edition of Your Morning Monarchy, and we are glad you're here. And again, we are brought to you by you. I've been trying to get to the news really quickly in these episodes, but in an effort to do that, I completely forgot yesterday to thank our latest patron. I teased that I was going to do it, but I don't think I did it. David T. Huge thanks to David T. over on patreon.com/Media Monarchy. That gives us the support we need to keep going and growing, moving and grooving. A huge thanks to Daniel W. for a donation via PayPal. You can find all those ways, including the Bitcoin. We've also gotten recent Bitcoin donations and the good old post office box, all at MediaMonarchy.com/support. If you can give a little, I can give a lot. Also, huge thanks to the Truth Seeker app and to RadioConfluence.com. Friday is the entertainment industrial complex. We look at all the media memes and the stories, all that we're going to talk about. You can find on the top of the tweets. We tweet everything out. The link list, I call it, about an hour before showtime. Now, if you look over at G20, Luke Rukowski has amazing footage, as he generally always does, but it is the exact, what should be in the textbooks of the example for this is not what anarchy looks like. It's not black masks smashing private property. Those are costumes, and you're playing a game, propping up the system. Trump and Putin meet at G20 in Hamburg as protests resume. U.S. News and World Report has the audacity to say the maestros of fake news, because everybody's got a giant boner for their two favorite 2 minutes hate. They're going to meet. Heads will explode. Meanwhile, U.S. labor market roars back, adding 222,000 jobs in June, allegedly. U.S. missile strike on North Korea, an unlikely option for now. For now. And there is a massive fire burning down a construction project in Oakland. I'd bet a milkshake we'll find out it'll probably be kids fucking around in the summertime. Hope you're doing well fucking around in the summertime. And again, glad you're here joining us for Your Morning Monarchy. Again, I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. We've been doing Media Monarchy since 9/11/05. And it's all brought to you by you. I think a perfect way to get into this episode is a great way to sort of describe what we see playing out all around us and what we talk about towards the end of all these episodes. Past is prologue. You can see it. This has all been done before. Sure, it's got a nice new shiny overlay and you can act like you're interacting with it with your fondle slab. But we've done all this before. In 1951, as the Cold War was intensifying, the CIA decided to see how Voice of America radio broadcasts into Eastern Europe compared with Soviet efforts. In a remarkably candid document brought to you by the fantastic FOIA fuckers over at Muckrock, the agency critically assessed the similarities and differences between U.S. and Soviet propaganda. Now, today, Voice of America, VOA, claims that it was founded during the Second World War to provide, quote, unbiased and accurate information, end quote. The CIA officers assessing Voice of America in 1951, however, saw the service as essentially similar to Soviet propaganda, going so far as to say that most Americans would be surprised by the similarities between the two. Quote from the document, "The resemblances between Soviet and American propaganda are great, much greater probably than most Americans realize. They derive from two principles that it goes into. The document proposes that similarities could be the result of opposing countries imitating the propaganda put out by their rivals, and even posits the existence of an international propagandist culture that tended to produce similar techniques. The document includes a list of, wouldn't you know it, 33 main similarities between Soviet and American propaganda, including the impression of objectivity, avoiding obvious lying on tangible facts, blurring distinction within enemy camp, and not dignifying opponent's position by quoting it. Similarities. A. Same values invoked. Peace and friendship, democracy, national independence, class justice, economic welfare, truthfulness, anti-Nazism, and individual freedom. Same propaganda principles. This is the B section. Clearness, simplicity, factualness, slanting, impression of objectivity. Avoiding obvious lying on tangible facts, distortion primarily in the intangibles, not attacking entrenched prejudices, not dignifying opponent's position by quoting it, distinguishing between rulers and people in enemy nations. including audience with self and a larger unity, not criticizing the audience, on and on and on. All these points, the similarities between U.S. and Soviet propaganda. However, it was in identifying where the two styles differed that the CIA saw the most strategic value. Each of them raises a question as to propaganda policy, whether the Soviet policy or emphasis differs from ours. It may or may not be more effective than ours. An inventory of differences should provide a number of starting points for examination of what propaganda methods are most effective. What propaganda methods are most effective? Oh, and wouldn't you know it, changes in the NDAA, that's the National Defense Authorization Act, this year ignited fears that Voice of America could be marketing itself to an American audience. If it does, the American public may get a direct demonstration of exactly what the international propagandist culture looks like today. And you can get and download all of these documents again thanks to Muckrock. Read the CIA's 1951 listicle comparing U.S. and Soviet propaganda. Agency memo found 33 similarities between Voice of America and its USSR counterparts. That's what we're soaking in. That's what we're looking at today. We've seen it before, and we're seeing it played out again. So let's go into the dinosaur media, and they are failing piles of garbage right now. It is fairly enjoyable to watch this. Yes, it's Schadenfreude, but damn, it's delicious. The New York Times falls for the parody North Korea Twitter account. They issued a correction about the intercontinental ballistic missile North Korea fired this week. The correction, flagged earlier by the Washington Free Beacon, acknowledges the original article cited a parody North Korea Twitter account. Because of it was an editing error. An earlier version of this article attributed incorrectly a Twitter statement to the North Korean government. The North Korean government did not belittle a joint American-South Korea military exercise. That statement was from the DPRK news service, a parody Twitter account. And the tweet in question, imbecilic Americans drunkenly fire missiles into East Sea of Korea, demonstrating near total ignorance of ballistic science. And that's not the first time a quote-unquote news organization has mistaken the parody account for the real thing. CNN fell for it. USA Today fell for it. Now even the DPRK parody account replied back. Ministry of Culture bans New York Times. Damn, good times. Funny stuff. So meanwhile, a series of fake news articles, blackmail of an anonymous Reddit user or users who had the audacity to poke fun at them, and a couple of undercover videos from Project Veritas revealing CNN producers admitting their own news is, quote, mostly bullshit, seems to be taking a toll on CNN's ratings. And there have been even other Project Veritas videos we haven't made reference to yet. I believe it's one that shows the producer saying, well, my brother's not the governor of New York. Talking about Cuomo on CNN. You always got to look at those last names. They hit us in the face, and it always seems so obvious. Oh my God, how can I not realize that Nick Kroll is the son of Jules Kroll of Kroll and Associates? You know, stuff like that. As the Federalist notes in the graph below, and again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes. You can see the charts and the graphs. If you aren't able right now, I can paint the picture in your mind. You look at a chart and you look at an arrow pointing down precipitously. For the week of June 26th through July 2nd, CNN's primetime shows, Anderson, Vanderbilt, CIA, Scroll and Key Cooper, and Don Lemon, managed to draw about 6% fewer viewers than reruns of Yogi Bear, Full House, and Friends, which air in the same time slots on Nick at Night. CNN's ratings collapse. Less viewers than Yogi Bear. Man, I hardly ever even watched Yogi Bear as a kid. Now the speculation grows, and again, this might just be BS. There's an interesting deep story to the internet war on CNN, the meme wars. Time Warner, of course, the parent of CNN. Time Warner is, of course, much, much more than just CNN. They own HBO, TNT, Warner Brothers, DC Comics, 10% of Hulu, Time Incorporated, AOL, Warner Books, and the Warner Music Group, among various other media entities. The theme that ties them all together is that they are all businesses oriented towards the consumer. That is, the types of businesses that are vulnerable from many directions to the type of internet attack that has been launched against CNN. And the $85.4 billion kicker to all of this, AT&T has announced an $85.4 billion deal to buy Time Warner. We've discussed that on the show. The mergers and acquisitions, the murders and executions currently being reviewed by the so-called Justice Department. AT&T, as you may or may not know, is another very heavily consumer-oriented business with its cell phone business and other cable, telecommunications, and digital entertainment services, of course, not the least of which would be cutting the cord over at room 64A. Where's Mark Klein's room over in the AT&T, of course, that siphons off everything to the NSA. Does AT&T really want to dish out $85.5 billion to become a potential additional target in the internet war against CNN? Does Time Warner really want to kill an $85 billion deal by keeping CNN alive when CNN is really a minuscule source of revenue for the corporate giant? The threat made by CNN to dox. If you don't know doxing, that means reveal the name of the documents. Oh, you've dropped the documents. Dox, D-O-X. The threat made by CNN to dox the original creator of the Trump WrestleMania meme that was retweeted by President Trump is one of the dumbest things ever seen done by a major corporation. If you understand the internet players now involved on the attack on CNN, CNN's existence comes into question, especially with an $85 billion acquisition deal hanging in the balance. Now, I actually thought it was a different meme originally. I didn't know it was the one where they're rolling around out in the ring. I thought it was the one where Vince McMahon goes, "Oh my God, you tricked me. This whole thing was a trick." Also a good one. I don't like the one where the ultimate punching guy breaks the guy's leg immediately. That one's pretty gross. The one where the guy has the fireworks down his pants is also highly amusing. Dad, where were you during the meme wars? Let me tell you, son. I was listening to The Morning Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. I am your host, webmaster, DJ, and so much more. You are streaming us live. It's 9:12 a.m. coming to you from the Peak Portland studios. We're glad you're here. MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Share the link, please. That helps us grow nice and organically. We don't have to buy ads. We don't have to buy followers or any of that garbage. But continuing our look at flaming piles of garbage, the Associated Press has become the latest news organization to retract a claim alleging that all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, is that a hashtag yet? Yes, all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies agreed that Russia was behind the hack of Democratic emails and tied to swing the election in favor of America's next top president. You know that story. The claim has repeatedly appeared in the news agencies' reporting in recent months, most recently even on June 29th in a piece by White House reporter Ken Thomas. Is that the same name of a former conspiracy writer? Jim Keith and Ken Thomas? I think it was Kenn. We'll have to investigate that. Quote, all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies have agreed Russia was behind last year's hack of Democratic email systems and tried to influence the 2016 election to benefit Trump, end quote, the story states, as they generally all do. The retraction emailed to RT.com on Friday. That's what they call dumping day. That's when they put news out that they don't really want you to know about, because they know you're out partying for the weekend. The correction read, in stories published April 6, June 2nd, June 26, and June 29th, the Associated Press reported that all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, have agreed that Russia tried to influence the 2016 election to benefit Trump. That assessment was based on information collected by 3 agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA, and published by the DNI. Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which represents all U.S. intelligence agencies. Not all 17 intelligence agencies were involved in reaching the assessment. This retraction, which they do not call a retraction, they call it a clarification. It's on the AP's website, and it, of course, follows similar moves made by the New York Times.
And yet another member of the mainstream media retracting fake news about President Trump spread by former National Security Advisor Susan Rice.
17 agencies came to a consensus conclusion that the Russian government at the highest levels was involved in an effort to play in our electoral process.
This time, it is the Associated Press issuing a late Friday night clarification just before the holiday weekend, so barely anyone would see it. Well, it reads in stories published April 6th, June 2nd, June 26th, and June 29th. The Associated Press reported that all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies have agreed that Russia tried to influence the 2016 election to benefit Donald Trump. Well, it turns out not all 17 intelligence agencies were involved. It was only 4. Just yesterday, the New York Times quietly issued a correction as well.
Hashtag not all 17 intelligence agencies. Now, you're already talking about it over in the chat, and we appreciate you joining us in the chat. You can find the links and the invites to the Discord chat up in the tweets at Media Monarchy. CNN has always been pretty well connected to the deep state. Let's not forget our not friend Tom Bradden, CIA agent, inspiration for the 8 is Enough television show, and creator of Crossfire, among many other things for CNN. Crossfire gave us the box, the genre, if you will, that passes for TV news. Let's have a conservative person and someone slightly less conservative, and they'll battle it out head to head, and we'll act like one of them is the left and one of them is the right. But it's really middle and far right. And they frame the debate, and that's how they get you to do a little bit of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, problem, reaction, solution. That's how that's been working for a long, long time. So we wouldn't be surprised if CNN is deeply, deeply involved in the deep state actions going on. What did we just hear at the top of the episode? 50 plus years of propaganda from the CIA. So Hollywood magic doesn't percolate only in the minds of legendary producers and acclaimed directors to be brought to life on the big screen and TV screens where actors' adept performances capture our imaginations. Rather, if the plot pertains to the military, it's more than likely the DoD has a hand in the script. From Meet the Parents, America's Got Talent, Cupcake Wars, Zero Dark 30, Iron Man, Oprah, Patriot Games, James Bond, Tomorrow Never Dies. If the production pertains to the war machine or the surveillance state, it is a veritable guarantee the government significantly influenced the final product. Censorship apparently reigns more supremely over Hollywood than we'd ever surmised. Nearly 1,800 movies and TV shows have borne the fierce scrutiny of the eagle-eyed Pentagon and the criminals in action. In fact, according to bombshell documents by Tom Secker and Matthew Alford of Insurge Intelligence. And we've got the original piece posted over on medium.com. Exclusive. Documents expose how Hollywood promotes war on behalf of the Pentagon, CIA, and NSA. Now, I've gotten to talk to Tom Secker once. I was on he and Pierce Redmond's show, The CIA in Hollywood. We talked about a fairly inconsequential film called The Race to Witch Mountain, starring The Rock, which for some reason had heavy Central Intelligence involvement. New documents obtained by Tom Secker and Matthew Alford. The DoD, CIA, and more frequently now, the NSA, don't take kindly to portrayal in a negative light, even when that well-deserved derision and criticism covers past exploits long in the public knowledge. It may be better known how the Pentagon consults with Hollywood to ensure accurate portrayal of chains of command, military culture, proper use of equipment, other obvious factors. But the DoD, it turns out, might as well pin the script, and in many cases, that's exactly what happens. When applicable, films and television series must be rubber-stamped by the government, no seal of approval, no production. Most often, DoD Chief Hollywood Liaison Phil Strub grants the seal for productions where Pentagon guidance has been officially sought. Anything amiss would require rewrites and adjustments to accommodate the military's best interests. Instances where the two cannot come to an agreement can mean scrapping the entire production, and it's happened before. Now, I've even heard of the points where if you want to do something that involves the military, let's say it's not necessarily a military movie, but the military shows up and, oh, damn, we'd love to be able to use a tank and some weapons and stuff. If you want tanks and weapons and stuff on loan from the killers, they got to approve your script. So I've oftentimes heard in behind-the-scenes stuff and making of productions, oh, well, we wanted to have this or that, but the feds wanted to get involved. And generally, fortunately speaking, the more indie films, the more exploitation films, horror, sci-fi, and otherwise, hopefully we're less likely to do it. Now it's nothing but superhero movies, and they are all giant military psyops. Oh, that new Wonder Woman movie, it's so great, I love World War. Secker and Alford, who obtained more than 4,000 documents pursuant to a Freedom of Information Act request, which admittedly are not included in the report, write, quote, "If there are characters, action, or dialogue that the DoD didn't approve of, then the filmmaker has to change to accommodate the military's demands. If they refuse, then the Pentagon packs up its toys and goes home." That's what I was just referring to. To obtain full cooperation, the producers have to sign contracts, production assistant agreements, which lock them into using a military-approved version of the script. This can lead to arguments when actors and directors ad-lib or improvise outside this approved screenplay. Lest there be any doubt, the DoD's weighty presence in filmmaking extends to the most picayune of details. Insurge Intelligence describes several instances in which one-liners and dramatic repartee the average moviegoer wouldn't necessarily think twice about featured the subject of bitter, behind-the-scenes quarrels pitting itinerant directors against the PR interests of the U.S. military, with the latter, one way or another, forever the victor. Tomorrow Never Dies provides a sound example, telling of the Pentagon's fastidiousness as it lords over the silver screen, but more so in the state's desire to remain a surreptitious influence. When Bond is about to halo jump out of a military transport plane, they realize he's going to land in Vietnamese waters. In the original script, Bond's CIA sidekick jokes, "You know what'll happen, it'll be a war, and maybe this time we'll win." That line was removed at the request of the DoD. Strangely, Phil Strub denied that there was any support for Tomorrow Never Dies, while the preeminent scholar in the field, Lawrence Sood, only lists the DoD connection under acknowledged cooperation. But the DoD are credited at the end of the film, and they obtained a copy of the production assistant agreement between the producers and the Pentagon. So meticulous the world's most gargantuan military, even the ostensibly fictitious name of an operation to capture the Hulk in the eponymous 2003 movie had to be switched to Angry Man from Ranch Hand, because the latter, Ranch Hand, is the name of a real military operation that saw the U.S. Air Force dump millions of gallons of pesticides and other poisons onto the Vietnamese countryside, rendering millions of acres of farmland poisoned and infertile. Operation Ranch Hand. Look it up. They also removed dialogue referring to all those boys, guinea pigs dying from radiation and germ warfare, an apparent reference to covert military experiments on human subjects, and we've actually got a little bit of radiation coming up in one of our next stories. But past transgressions, no matter how publicly excoriated at the time, do not acceptable material for the Pentagon make. References to the Iran-Contra scandal ultimately sounded the death knell for a movie called Countermeasures, because, according to Strub in the documents, there's no need for us to remind the public of the Iran-Contra affair. Rather than risk summoning the specter of the government indiscretion and corruption, production of Countermeasures ceased. The majority of the documents we obtained are diary-like reports from the entertainment liaison offices, which rarely refer to script changes and never in an explicit, detailed way. Secker and Alford write, adding in, "So many documents remain undisclosed, it would be impossible to evaluate the extent of military censorship in Hollywood. However, the documents do reveal that the DoD requires a preview screening of any project they support and sometimes makes changes even after production has wrapped. Where the DoD issues official agreements with film production crews, the CIA exerts influence in an expectedly less formal manner through its entertainment liaison officer, Chase Brandon, who sometimes takes on quite more than an advisory capacity, even inserting himself at the foundational writing stages of the creative process." Intelligence Insurge continues, quote, "Brandon did this most prominently on the spy thriller The Recruit, where new agents put through CIA training at The Farm, an obvious vehicle for inducting the audience into that world and giving them a glimpse behind the curtain. The original story treatment and early drafts of the script were written by CIA agent Chase Brandon." Now, Tom Secker and Pierce Redmond have done a ton of work on Chase Brandon on their CIA and Hollywood series, as it connects intimately to Robert De Niro, who we'll hear about here in just a minute. The Recruit includes lines about new threats of a post-Soviet world, including the great villainous justification for a $600 billion defense budget, Peru, along with rebuttals of the idea that the CIA failed to prevent 9/11, and it repeats the adage that the CIA's failures are known, but its successes are not. All this helped propagate the idea that the agency is a benevolent, rational actor in a chaotic and dangerous world. The idea of using cinema to pin the blame for problems on isolated rogue agents or bad apples, thus avoiding any notion of systemic, institutional, or criminal responsibility, is right out of CIA DoD's playbook. So that's actually our friend Claire Burnish's take on these pretty bombshell new FOIA documents. FOIA docs show CIA Pentagon made 1,800 movies and TV shows to make America love war. And we, of course, again, include the entire original piece over on Medium.com. And the part about Robert De Niro, let's just pull a little piece out of Tom's article. In a very different kind of film, the hugely popular romantic comedy Meet the Parents, Chase Brandon requests that they change a scene where Ben Stiller's character discovers Robert De Niro's, Stiller's father-in-law-to-be, secret hideaway. In the original script, Ben Stiller finds CIA torture manuals on a desk, but Chase Brandon changed that to photos of Robert De Niro with various dignitaries. This is the point that Robert De Niro changed. This seems to be the point that Robert De Niro, much like we speculate someone like Tom Hanks, they seem to become a willing cutout for the intelligence agencies. This is the point where their films almost entirely change, and everything they make from there on, garbage. Robert De Niro is a fucking embarrassment of what he used to be. He makes nothing but propaganda films anymore. Tom Hanks makes nothing but propaganda films anymore. And when you dig behind the scenes, you find that Robert De Niro intimately connected to Chase Brandon. In some ways, Robert De Niro has embodied CIA agent Chase Brandon. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Friday, July 7th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Let's get to a little bit of that radiation and go all the way back to October 26, 1984. With a letter written to one of the longest-running websites, period, The Straight Dope. Been around since 1973 and online since pretty much the beginning. Dear Cecil, my girlfriend says that half of the film crew and 8 of the cast of the movie The Conqueror, starring John Wayne, died of cancer after an A-bomb test in Nevada. It can't be the truth. That many people, can it? Please, Cecil, give us the straight dope. John L., Santa Monica, California. Cecil replies, I'm horrified to have to report this, John, but your girlfriend's claim is only slightly exaggerated. Of the 220 persons who worked on The Conqueror on location in Utah in 1955, 91 had contracted cancer as early as the 1980s, and 46 died of it, including stars John Wayne, Susan Hayward, and Agnes Moorehead, and director Dick Powell. Experts say under ordinary circumstances, only 30 people out of a group that size should have gotten cancer. The cause? No one can say for sure, but many attribute it to the radioactive fallout from U.S. atomic bomb tests in nearby Nevada. The whole ghastly story, believe it or not, is told in a book called The Hollywood Hall of Shame by Harry and Michael Medved. You might know those film reviewing brothers. I actually got to talk with Harry Medved each and every Friday when I was back at the commercial radio station. He's actually a really nice guy. John Wayne, Agnes Moorehead, Dick Powell, Susan Hayward all got amazing fast-acting cancer after they made the film The Conqueror. That's just a little bit of what Hollywood can do to you. And that's when you even play along. Now, you may be seeing this story floating around in the news. The retired federal agent who discovered what he believes to be the first photographic evidence of Amelia Earhart alive and well after crash landing in the Pacific Ocean during her attempted round-the-world flight says he didn't initially capture the significance of the image until years later. The black and white photo is of a group of people standing on a dock in Jalute Atoll in the Marshall Islands, including one who seems to be a slim woman with her back to the camera. A new documentary airing Sunday on the History Channel claims the figure is the famed aviator who disappeared 80 years ago this month. Retired U.S. Treasury agent Les Kinney said in an interview Wednesday with the AP that he was looking for clues surrounding Amelia Earhart's disappearance in the National Archives in College Park, Maryland. That's where I saw the white stripes. When he found the photograph in 2012 in a box filled mostly with text documents from the aforementioned O&I, Office of Naval Intelligence. No, we mentioned the Office of National Intelligence. This is naval intelligence, and you might recall from the film JFK, once O&I, always O&I. But didn't really look at it carefully because he was looking at thousands of other images. In 2015, he took another look at the photo. I looked at it and went, I can't believe this. He asked his wife to come over and pointed to the seated person, asking if it seemed to be a man or a woman. She said, it's a woman. His search led him to identify the ship seen at the right, apparently pulling Earhart's plane wreckage on a barge. The image is at the heart of a 2-hour Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence, which argues Earhart, along with her navigator Fred Noonan, crash-landed in the Japanese-held Marshall Islands, where they were picked up by the Japanese military and held prisoner. In the documentary, that photo is subjected to facial recognition and other forensic testing, such as torso measurements. Experts on the show claim the subjects are likely Earhart and Noonan. Others aren't convinced, and the story goes on. Finder of potential game-changing Earhart pick tells story. We'll see if we maybe watch that. Now let's turn from the visual spectacle to the audio spectacles, as pop star Kesha has taken aim at her former producer Dr. Luke in her first solo track since she unsuccessfully sued him for alleged sexual assault and harassment. Kesha has premiered Praying, which is being released through Dr. Luke's label, Kemosabe, in which she warns, "We both know all the truth I could tell." In the accompanying video, the Die Young singer lies in a coffin while reading an emotional monologue, recalling the pain of her alleged ordeal by begging to die. She says, "If I'm alive, why?"
Kesha is officially back. The singer has released a dramatic, eye-catching video for her new song Praying and announced that her new album Rainbow is due out August 11th.
I hope you find your peace, falling on your knees.
The music video was directed by all-time great Jonas Åkerlund, who has worked with the likes of Metallica, Blink-182, and Lady Gaga in the past. Kesha begins the visuals with a spoken-word intro contemplating her current disposition. Am I dead, or is this one of those dreams? Those horrible dreams that seem like they last forever? If I am alive, why? Why? If there is a God or whatever, something somewhere, why have I been abandoned by everyone and everything I've ever known, I've ever loved? The track is co-written by Kesha, Ben Abraham, Andrew Jocelyn, and Ryan Lewis, who also produced the track. As for Rainbow, it will be Kesha's first album in nearly 5 years following a lengthy and bitter legal battle involving allegations of sexual assault and battery against her former record label boss and producer Dr. Luke. It, quote, marks a new beginning for Kesha, one based around inner strength and musical exploration, according to an official statement. The singer has also posted an essay about her long fight back over on the Lenny blog, in which she opens up about what inspired the new song. This song is about coming to feel empathy for someone else, even if they hurt you or scare you. It's a song about learning to be proud of the person you are, even during low moments when you feel alone. It's also about hoping everyone, even someone who hurt you, can heal.
She posted it on the Lenny blog. Fantastic friends with Lena Dunham. Now, releasing a ballad as your brand new single, usually not a good move, pop star-wise. So she's laying in a coffin, asking for death, playing the religious card. Playing the pity card. Now, we followed the Kesha case a little bit here on these shows, and all we had to do is basically point out there were never any charges filed, just lots of accusations. Kind of like the similar thing that just destroyed the band Power Bottom. This is Troll America. But it won't just be Kesha on the record, and the half a dozen gangs of songwriters and producers it takes to crank this bullshit out, but it also includes a duet. Oh, Dolly Parton, why would you? They do a duet of Dolly Parton's 1980 tune, Old Flames Can't Hold a Candle to You, and not one, but two collaborations with the Eagles of death metal. So that's Kesha's new pandery album, Rainbow. More bad news? French electronic composer, it's easy for me to say, Pierre Henry, whose music inspired the theme tune of the American animated series Futurama, died at the age of 89, his assistant said yesterday, known as the Godfather of Techno. Now his name is Pierre Henry, Henry. Usually if it's the Y, it's Henry. Is it Henri? Pierre Henry. Psych rock riff was used in the Oscar-winning Costas Gravas film Z from 1965. It was later remixed by Fatboy Slim for the Lindsay Lohan film Mean Girls. French electronic music star Jean-Michel Jarre led the tributes to Henri, who said he had opened the way for his own music. He wasn't just a musician and an innovator, he was a poet. All his life he tried to bring about a fusion between experimentation and poetry. He leaves behind an enormous and impressive body of work, and I hope France gets him the homage that he deserves. Full disclosure, I'm not familiar with the work of Pierre Henry, and that's what's fun about being a huge music fan, is that there's always more to dive into, always more to explore, and be excited about it. Sir Paul McCartney and Sony have reached a deal in a battle over who owns the publishing rights to the Beatles songs. The Hollywood Reporter says the musician had gone to U.S. court seeking to regain the rights to 267 of Beatle tracks. He had been trying to get them back since the 1980s, when Michael Jackson famously outbid him for the rights. He was just doing the idea that Paul McCartney gave him. Hey, you know what you should do is probably get into music publishing. That's where the money is, McCartney told Jackson. Jackson's debt-ridden estate sold the songs to Sony last year, along with others, including New York, New York. Sir Paul's legal case filed in the Southern District of Manhattan, of course, long illustrious history, Robert Morgenthau and all that garbage. Paul's legal case filed in a Manhattan court in January was over what is known as copyright termination, the right of authors to reclaim ownership of their works from music publishers after a specific length of time has passed. He claimed that he was set to reacquire the Beatles songs in 2018, but said Sony had not confirmed that it would transfer the copyrights to him. The parties have resolved this matter by entering, of course, into a confidential settlement agreement.
Paul McCartney has reached a confidential settlement of his lawsuit against Sony ATV Music Publishing LLC, in which he sought to reclaim copyrights to songs by the Beatles. On Thursday, the accord disclosed in filings with the U.S. District Court in Manhattan ends McCartney's preemptive effort to ensure that the copyrights, once owned by Michael Jackson, would go to him starting in October 2018. U.S. District Judge Edgardo Ramos signed an order dismissing the case but agreed to revisit it if a dispute arose. In January, McCartney had sued for a declaration that he could reclaim more than 260 copyrights, including for songs credited to him and John Lennon, such as I Want to Hold Your Hand, Yesterday, and Hey Jude.
Paul McCartney has reached a confidential settlement of his lawsuits against Sony ATV Music Publishing, in which he sought to reclaim copyrights to songs by the Beatles. The accord, disclosed in filings with the U.S. District Court in Manhattan, ends McCartney's preemptive effort to ensure that the copyrights, once owned by Michael Jackson, would go to him starting in October 2018. It is unclear how the accord affects McCartney's copyright claims. The singer's representatives could not be immediately reached for comment. McCartney had sued for a declaration that he could reclaim more than 260 copyrights, including for songs credited to him and John Lennon, such as I Want to Hold Your Hand, Yesterday, and Hey Jude. The registrations at issue also covered several songs he wrote as a solo artist. McCartney had outbid Jackson in 1985 for the Beatles' song rights, which were later rolled into Sony ATV, a joint venture with Sony Corp. The pop star's estate sold its stake in that venture to Sony for $750 million in 2016. Changes made in 1976 to U.S. copyright law let authors like McCarthy reclaim song rights after periods of time elapse.
Where did you get this? The alternative media, Jerry. That's where you hear the truth.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Let's get the last couple of pop culture headlines here on your Friday morning Monarchy. Rihanna's newest alleged relationship was outed Monday when she was spotted kissing and cuddling with a man in a pool in Spain. Various outlets have since identified the mystery man, and he turns out to be a very, 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 very rich businessman from Saudi Arabia, who also owns his own professional soccer league. Like the Needed Me singer, Hassan Jamil is 29 years old, but he is much, much richer than Rihanna, whose wealth is valued in the mere $30 million range.
It appears that Rihanna may have a new man in her life, and the internet is literally losing their minds over it. So much so that the hashtag Rihanna has a man party has been a trending topic on Twitter all day long, and I have to say, her new man is giving us some wild thoughts.
Yeah, I can hardly stand listening to even a couple of seconds of those garbage videos. Sorry, Billboard, but you're the worst. Rihanna's got a new billionaire Saudi boyfriend. Jamil is heir to his family's Abdul Latin Jamil company, which holds the distribution rights for Toyota in Saudi Arabia. In 2016, the company was worth $1.5 billion, according to Forbes. He also owns a Saudi pro soccer league comprising 14 teams called, very humbly, the Jameel League. So I asked our buddy Darren over in the UK. I was like, man, you got anything on this? He's like, well, this is going to become a major problem for her due to the following unanswered questions. Toyota trucks, hugely popular with terrorists. Why is that? Now, it's another situation of pop stars getting involved with Saudi millionaires, because, of course, power is the real aphrodisiac, right? Kissinger, Heinz. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is going to go about as well as MIA's relationship with the Bronfman family, the Seagram's empire. They'll probably be together for about 6 months, but I wouldn't be surprised if she gets knocked up. Pediatric unit built by Madonna in Malawi to open July 11th. What could possibly go right? Madonna says the children's wing at a hospital in Malawi she has been building for 2 years completed its first surgery last week and will officially open on July 11th. The Mercy James Institute for Pediatric Surgery and Intensive Care, located at the Queen Elizabeth Central Hospital in the city of Blantyre, had a soft opening and is the first of its kind in Malawi. It was built in collaboration with the Malawian Ministry of Health. So not to be cynical, but probably the future site of pedogate child abuse. Oh my gosh, speaking of people who have giant gangs of producers writing their songs, Adele canceled 2 Wembley shows after damaging her vocal cords, begging fans to forgive her, and writing a really weird long letter threatening to retire. Oh, I'm going to threaten to retire. I bet she'll retire like LCD Sound System and the Grateful Dead, make a big fucking deal about it, but never actually go away. But I'm not bitter about it at all. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. That's the media memes edition of your morning show. Each day of the week, we tend to focus in on a different area of the news. It's possible, if you wanted, you could just sort of interact and consume Media Monarchy, just the parts you like. If you just like the food stuff, you could subscribe and just get the Wednesday food shows and just get the Food World Order news. You can find all the individual links at MediaMonarchy.com/feeds. Plural, F-E-E-D-S. That'll give you all the individual feeds. What's the sample say that I play? I just want to hear the music, that's all. You could just subscribe to the Pump Up the Volume feeds and just get the music shows. Monday's world news, Tuesday's tech, Wednesday's food, health, and environment news, Thursday is dark, and Friday, we call it the entertainment industrial complex. You can find all the hashtags that you can submit stories over on the tweets. And again, we're not just crowd-funded, we are crowd-sourced. You are who we get our news from. So a huge thanks to everybody that does that. Such as, let's see, definitely our buddy Sean Cathcart, Claire Burnish, Ray Vahi, Nicole Redo, all of you, even the ones I'm not mentioning because I can't remember them off the top of my head. It is a Friday, which means New Music Friday. All kinds of new records coming out. Oh my God, everybody's excited about that tone-deaf rapper named Jay-Z. He's got a new record. And I think his 4-year-old daughter sings on it too, which is also popping through the tweets. However, some albums coming out today which are worth checking out. You know, there's new records from the Melvins, a new live album from the Violent Femmes, and there's that new collaboration from Portland's own The Decemberists. They've teamed up with a British singer named Olivia Chaney, and they have a project called Offa Rex, O-F-F-A-R-E-X, and we played one of those songs on our Pump Up the Volumes recently. Chaz Bundick, a.k.a. Toro y Moi, has a new record out today. The mighty Canadians known as Broken Social Scene have a new record. Portland's own Starfucker have a new collection out today. And a record comes out today called Every Valley from a band that we are going to use to wrap up this episode. They call themselves Public Service Broadcasting, and we played a couple of tracks. They were on our Best of 2015 mix with their song Go, with all the space sounds from their album, The Race to Space, I think. Their new record is called Every Valley, and it seems a little darker. It seems about British industrial work, coal mining and such. Their music is very plunderphonic. If you're a fan of The Books, if you're a fan of Negativland, or if you're a fan of Tortoise, it has that kind of sound and feel to it. So this episode today is going to be wrapped up with brand new music from Public Service Broadcasting. It is a rager from them called All Out. I've never heard their guitars raging quite so much. We've also played a recent song of theirs called Progress, which is a really interesting one. Features vocals from Tracy Ann Campbell from the legendary Camera Obscura band. And it's pretty transhumanist. We've been playing it on the regular locations, or regular rotation, rather. I believe in progress, it says over and over and over again, with samples of men won't do the work anymore. Machines will do the work. And you know what your job is, to maintain those machines, right? The other musical note I want to remind you about, we're on Spotify. That's where we basically put together some playlists. So if you are on Spotify, you can check us out. We've just started our new Summer 2017 playlist. Pretty much any songs that you hear on the Media Monarchy broadcast, if they're available, we put them on the Spotify playlist. So you can go get them and you can go check out those songs. And of course, always love to hear from you. James@MediaMonarchy.com is the place you can reach out to me. Young people enslavement? What are you guys talking about in the chat? We appreciate you being in the chat, and we appreciate you listening to us live at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. So I told you about that song that's coming up at the end of this episode, which means it's time for this day in history. Past is prologue. Holy moly. July 7th. 1863. The United States begins its first military draft. But guess what? Exemptions cost $300. I didn't know you could buy exemptions. You know, that's kind of like how the fake religious like to buy those indulgences. Well, I don't really think I'm going to stop sinning or being terrible to people, but I'm going to buy some carbon indulgences. So that begins our look at this day in history. Exemptions for $300. Wow. July 7th, 1865. 4 conspirators in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln are all hanged on this day. Jumping to the 20th century, July 7th. Oh my God, there was no precedent before it. Sliced bread. July 7th, 1928. Sliced bread is sold for the first time, and it was on the inventor's 48th birthday, all sold by the Chillicothe Baking Company in Chillicothe, Missouri. July 7th, 1930. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, died on this day. July 7th, 1941. The American occupation of Iceland replaces the British occupation of Iceland on this day, July 7th, 1941. 1946, Howard Hughes nearly dies when his XF-11 reconnaissance aircraft prototype crashes into a Beverly Hills neighborhood. July 7th, 1954, Elvis Aaron Presley makes his radio debut when WHBQ Memphis plays his first recording for Sun Records, That's All Right, Mama. July 7th, 1956, The Platters' My Prayer was released. I like that's a nice little sync with Kesha's Prayer. And July 7th, 1981, U.S. President Ronald Reagan appoints Sandra Day O'Connor to become the first female member of the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, speaking of propaganda, July 7th, 1983, Samantha Smith, U.S. schoolgirl, flies to the Soviet Union at the invitation of Secretary General Yuri Andropov. Now, we've talked about this in the past. This is giant propaganda moves. Little girl writes a letter to Russia. Hey, why everybody says you're bad? So in a big propaganda move, they flew her over to Russia to try and, past is prologue. Cold War. Here we are again. Satanic panic. Terrible presidents. Terrible movies. Again and again and again. July 7th, 1992, the New York Court of Appeals rules that women have the same right as men to go topless in public. I just don't really see many women exercising that right. Exercise your rights for America. July 7th, 2005. On the morning, specifically, of July 7th, 2005. Bombs are detonated in 3 crowded London subways and 1 bus during the city's peak rush hour. The synchronized suicide bombings, which were thought to be the work of Al-Qaeda, killed 56 people, including the bombers, and injured another 700. It was the largest attack on Great Britain since World War II. Now, HistoryChannel.com notes, no warning was given. No warning was given whatsoever, unless, that is, your name was Peter Power, and you worked for Visor Consultants, and you were running a drill on the morning of 7/7, mirroring the exact events that would unfold in real time.
Peter Power, dupe or accomplice? Then, on 7/7/2005, we were told on TV by Peter Power of Visor Consultants that they and the private company employing them, who helped choose the scenario for it, were running a mock terrorist drill in the London Underground, with practically the same scenario as what actually really happened on that day. In other words, the actual mock anti-terror drill that the BBC Panorama programme of May 2004 had outlined had been chosen by Visor's client to be carried out on the very same day that 4 Muslim suicide bombers also chose the same scenarios that Visor's client had chosen for the mock drill, causing real and devastating explosions on 3 London tube trains and 1 road vehicle. Please think about that unbelievable set of coincidences for a few seconds, to let the implications of it sink in. Then, please ask yourself, what are the odds against all of that happening by chance?
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Visor Consultants. We specialise in helping people to get their crisis management response. How do you jump from slow time thinking to quick time doing? And we chose a scenario with their assistance which is based on a terrorist attack because they're very close to a property occupied by Jewish businessmen. They're in the city, and there are more American banks in the city than there are in the whole of New York. A logical thing to do. And I've still got the...
I was going to say, how extraordinary today must feel for you as it unfolds.
In his TV video clip, Peter Power states that their customer helped to choose the exact scenario. I repeat, Visor's customer helped to choose the exact scenario. To this day, Peter Power refuses to publicly identify the customer who chose the exact scenario. Why?
7/7, 2005, 12 years ago today, series of 4 explosions occurs on London's transport system, mirroring drills being run at the exact same time. Now, there have been a lot of recent events that claim the mantle of UK's 9/11. I don't know that Grenfell gets it. It may look the same because it was a building on fire, but that's pretty much where I think the similarities end. 7/7 is a fundamental, foundational piece of research for you to do if you're involved in any of this. It's one of the main kind of benchmark pieces for the post-9/11 war of terror world that we live in, where it's all supposed to seem normal. RIP to all those lost on that day. And I believe even somebody in the chat said they were living in London at the time. Continuing to look at this day in history, July 7th, 2007, the first live Earth benefit concert was held in 11 locations around the world. And as we told you yesterday on this day in history, it was when the Arctic Monkeys basically said, how hypocritical for a bunch of rock stars to waste a bunch of energy. Our lights alone could power a bunch of houses. Live Earth Hypocrisy benefit concert a decade ago today. And 1 year ago today, July 7th, 2016, former U.S. Army soldier Micah Xavier Johnson allegedly shot 14 policemen during an anti-police protest in downtown Dallas, Texas, killing 5 of them. He was subsequently killed by a robot-delivered bomb. Published to my own Media Monarchy website a decade ago today, Ron Paul tops John McCain in campaign cash. And the other story, health food maker promotes China-free products. A U.S. health food company will label its products China-free to ease concerns about contamination. Food for Health International, which is based in Orem, Utah, making and promoting China-free products. Ron Paul Cash and China-free products, both those articles published to my own website a decade ago today. I say it, I only am half joking. Do you know you can run your own website, that you don't have to do it off of Facebook? Pretty fun. I enjoy doing it. Celebrating birthdays today, July 7th, Gustav Mahler. Born on this day in 1860. It also would have been Robert A. Heinlein's birthday today. Now, I had a funny interaction on the tweets with kind of a new listener They said they were watching the latest New World Next Week, where I make reference to Starship Trooper. And I think I do say the singular of it. They're like, oh yeah, I was just rocking out to that. Like, oh yeah, you like that movie? They're like, no, I was listening to the song by Yes. I'm like, oh wait, I didn't realize that Starship Trooper was a song by Yes. She said, oh, I didn't realize Robert Heinlein was an author who made books like Starship Troopers. That's the interaction you can have. I know it sounds silly, but it's important. Celebrating birthdays today. Furthermore, Charlie Louvin of the Louvin Brothers, he actually passed away in 2011. Doc Severinsen, still kicking it, turning 90 today. You might remember him as the always wildly dressed band leader from The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Canadian singer-songwriter J.J. Barrie, born on this day, and the ultimate timekeeper, Richard Starkey, a.k.a. Ringo Starr, born on this day in 1940. It's also late film critic Joel Siegel's birthday. I actually didn't realize he passed away of pancreatic cancer a decade ago. He was an ABC movie critic for a long, long time. It's also the construction worker's birthday, David Hodo from The Village People. It's also Shelley Duvall, Vonda Shepard, former comedian Jim Gaffigan's birthday, Cree Summer, who you might remember from A Different World, and Michelle Kwan. All those folks celebrating birthdays today, I don't know that any of them will make it into our daily DJ set at noon, because it is a New Music Friday, and I'm pretty sure I can pack the entire Pump Up the Volume episode today with brand new music. Speaking of brand new music, we will rock out with brand new music from Public Service Broadcasting. Their new record, Every Valley, comes out today on Play It Again Sam Records, and we're going to rock out all out from Public Service Broadcasting as we wrap up, yes, an admittedly short week of your morning Monarchy shows, but we're glad you're here. It's the Media Memes edition of your Morning Monarchy for Friday, 7/7/2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for being here, for taking part, and reminding you, as always, like Jello Biafra says, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
We're not going to take any more. This is enough.
What you see on the telly is nothing. What you read in the papers is nothing. I was brought up to respect police. I don't respect them now.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology, and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.